Hello, my friends. It's Tim Little from the Cape Knights Gallery, and I hope you're doing well. Those of you who know me know that I love Mount Greylock. Mount Greylock is located in western Massachusetts in the Berkshires, and it's part of the Appalachian Trail, but it's also the tallest summit in the state. And believe it or not, from the top of that mountain, you can see 5 states, Massachusetts because you're in it, but you can also see New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, and New York. And it's a fairly easy drive to get up to the top on a paved road. They've got a big parking lot up there. They've got a big tower called the War Memorial, and you can go up in there and get an even better view. And they also have a lodge you can stay in overnight seasonally, and you can also get a nightly dinner there right around sunset. So it's just a great place to visit. I used to live not far from there, and then I moved down to the Cape, and I found, like many people, you appreciate the things that you move away from a little bit more than when you lived there. So I started going back there to photograph it off for workshops and so on. But my night photography journey started there around 2004. And since then, I've spent so many nights just enjoying the Milky Way or the moonlight, doing my photography, doing star trail work, light painting, all of that. And it's just been an incredible experience. Several years ago, I got a email from the Massachusetts Department of Conservation, and they asked me if I would be able to provide some images for their theater room at the visitor center, which I did, and they ended up blowing them up to, one was 10 by 10, the other one's 10 by 20. So it's an honor to have my photos there at the visitor center. And so imagine my excitement when a few weeks ago, I got contacted by the folks there asking me if I'd like to come in and do a talk about my photography, which of course I said yes to, and we scheduled that for September 9th, which as of the recording of this video is just a few days ago. And so I was able to talk about my photos from the summit, talk a little bit about technique, and share some stories about my time up there and the people I've met along the way. I recorded the presentation using an iPhone and an iPad and a microphone, and I've put it all together for the folks that either didn't get to attend that would love to see it, or the folks that did attend and would like to see it again. And so if you're interested, here is that video. It's going to be about 55 minutes or so. I share some photos in there that I've never shown before, told some stories that I've never told before, and I talk a little bit about astronomy as well, things that are relevant to September of 2023 somewhat, but also things that are relevant for a very long time. If you're interested in astronomy, you may find a little bit of information here helpful. I hope you enjoy the video, and if you're ever in the area of the Berkshires, that you get a chance to visit Mount Greylock in season. If you have any questions about anything that you saw here, feel free to send me an email or just leave a comment below, and I'll be happy to answer that. Thanks for watching. All right. Thank you. Oh yeah, here's the air right here. I'm gonna do everything over here. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't blame you. Well, hey everybody. Thanks for coming today. I know it's a little bit warm. That said, if for some reason you've got to use the bathroom or get out of here, I completely understand. I have snipers on the roof though, so just be aware that could happen. There we go. So today I'm going to talk about a few things. How many people here are photographers? Okay. All right. Great. You have to leave now. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm going to talk about some of my stories from all of the years that I've spent photographing up there at night. I'm going to talk about astronomy because that goes hand in hand with what I do, of course. Photography technique, for those of you who are interested, kind of a once-over. Everybody else, their eyes will glaze over, but it's only about 30 seconds, so it's not too bad. And then I've got some quizzes, so if you pay attention, this is how I get people to stay awake. If you pay attention, I have 3 questions I'm going to ask during this presentation. The first hand that goes up with the right answer will win something out of this bin. So keep that in mind. Even if you're related to me, it's okay too. By the way, everybody should get that opportunity. It's okay to take pictures like her. Sometimes people try to sneak a photo from behind somebody else's head. I see you. I always see that when it happens. But if you want to take a picture, if you're a photographer and you want to grab a screen capture of something, please feel free. If I'm in your way, just tell me I'm in your way and I will move. So this is me. I am Tim Little, and I'm a low-light astro landscape photographer. So that's a fancy way of saying I shoot moonlit and starry landscapes. I'm very rarely out during the day with my camera equipment. I love how the night looks. I'm based on Cape Cod, so why is it that I'm even here today? I grew up in Lanesboro. I grew up right down the road from here. And so when you live in an area, I find like you don't appreciate the place that you live. So now I appreciate Mount Greylock a lot more that I live 3 hours away. You know, not a very short drive anymore. This is the type of work that I do, typically. Just shot this a couple weeks ago on the Cape. I use equipment that's really sensitive to light. I use equipment that is really geared more towards night photography and to some degree shooting deep sky objects. And I use a lot of handheld lighting. I'm going to talk a lot about that as we get going here. And some other examples of night photography is a lot of different things, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But they can be all of these. This is moonlight at 2 a.m. So there's a lot of light out there that you just can't see with your own eyes. Been featured in a bunch of stuff. Thrilled that I've had so many people contact me over the years for different purposes. I've made the cover of Cape Cod Life a few times. I have a book, Cape Cod Nights, that came out. And just absolutely blessed to be able to have all of these opportunities that night photography has given me. So I used to be in banking. That was my career before this. And I used to go out and shoot night photography because I didn't really want to be around people too much. Spent a lot of time around people during the day. So now I run around at night, and it turns out I'm still around a lot of people. But that's fine, because those are the type of people I want to be around. Yeah. See if it's going to reach that far? There we go. I also sell my artwork. This is me from last weekend down in Falmouth, selling some artwork at an outdoor fair. So I do a little bit of everything. But here's what we're really here to talk about today, is Mount Greylock. Hi, how are you? You just missed it. Thanks for coming, folks. I appreciate your time. Sorry about that. Yep. Hello. Hi. Wherever you like. Yep. I should have brought my WD-40 today. So, my time on Mount Greylock started in 1987. This is my earliest memory of being on Mount Greylock. Who's done the Ramble before? Has anybody hiked the Ramble before? Yeah. So apparently I did that in 1987. That's me pointing off into the distance somewheres. And I'm standing next to somebody with a Max Headroom shirt. So that should give you an idea how long ago in time this was. And if you can't see it that well, there you go. So that's 12-year-old me. Somehow, and I have no recollection of how I convinced my parents that it was okay to go up to Greylock at 12 years old on a hike. I have a feeling I just told people I was going to somebody's house. And I did, technically, and then we just kept going, apparently. But I do remember a photographer crouching down in front of me and taking a picture. I didn't really think much of it. And then somehow over the course of the next couple days, this popped up in the paper. So the secret was out, although I'm not entirely convinced anybody who might have cared saw it at the time. So I was able to go on newspapers.com and pull this archive. So I was pretty excited about that. So that was 1987, October 13th, so almost to the month. But let's move ahead 16 years later to a specific date, October 29th, 2003. We all remember where we were on that day, right? Yeah. The mood lighting, yeah. That was the future. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So yeah, 16 years later. And it was a Wednesday. Not that you need to know that, but what you do need to know is something was heading towards Earth. Now we're getting into the sci-fi portion of this whole event. What could that be? So back in 2003, I was just starting to get into digital photography. And, there weren't a lot of options out there at the time. I had a film camera, and then I picked up a digital that you're going to see in a minute. This is our sun, in case you're not aware. And on the sun, we have sunspots and solar flares. And that happens during different cycles. And the result is, any astronomy people in here? A little bit? Okay, yeah. The result is, this is the technical slide I'm quizzing all of you on later. It results in charged particles coming towards the Earth and interacting with our magnetic field. Something very interesting happens. Now, when a solar flare heads towards the Earth, now we know it's coming. But just to give you an idea how dangerous this could potentially be, back in the 1800s, a solar flare hit the Earth head on. And all the people, back in the old days, remember they're doing tap to tap tap, Morse code, and they're sending out their messages over wires. All the people wearing the headphones got shocked because that solar flare hit the electrical grid. And for an hour, see, they shut down the grid because they knew something was wrong. For an hour, that grid stayed energized because of that solar flare. Now, if that had happened today, it would have knocked out all of our communication satellites and all of our cellular capability. We just missed one of those flares about 5 years ago. Earth was a little bit ahead of it, so probably didn't hear about it because nothing happened. Yeah. So the next day, unbeknownst to me, this solar flare is coming. It was a Thursday, and really we were going to have the perfect storm. This is what I had in my arsenal of camera equipment. State of the art, 5 megapixel Sony camera. Had no idea how to use it. I got it at Ritz Camera. Remember Ritz Camera back in the mall? Yeah, I bought it at Ritz Camera, and I had it on a payment plan of $700. Yeah, I think you can buy them used now for around 40 bucks. Yeah, if you need an antique camera for your collection. So yeah, I had that. I didn't really know how to use it, but I had a friend that worked in the mall at Ritz Camera, and somebody had come into the camera store all excited because something was happening that night. And they needed a tripod. So this friend of mine said, maybe we could go out with that new camera you have and see what we can get. And I said, yeah, okay, why not? So we came up here. This is the picture I shot on my cell phone, I will admit, just a couple days ago. You're in this building right now. So I was just over there near those yellowy flowers. And I just aimed the camera in that direction just to see what I would get. And I got that. And that was the first time I ever got a night shot, ever. And it happened right here. So my beginning of my night photography happened about 100 feet off in that direction. And again, I had no idea what I was doing, and this is what the camera gave me. And I was so excited about this. So I just started clicking away. This is what a solar flare will do when it hits the Earth's magnetosphere. We get northern lights. This is the best display that I had seen down here ever. The fact that it came this far south, it's technically called the Northern Lights, so as you would suspect, you have to go north to see them. But every so often, the flare is big enough, the interaction is large enough, that you'll be able to see it down here. So I snapped away, and I got several different photos. I was so thrilled that I was getting these. It just blew my mind. And the fact that you could see some green and some pink. Sometimes we get a little bit of a pink glow down on the Cape. It's not much. But to be able to actually get color variations, I was just blown away by it. Here is the building you're sitting in right now. You can just barely make it out right here. So it was a good night. It was so good. I was convinced, like, I knew everything about this night photography business now. I'm going to go take awesome pictures. Let's go up to Greylock at night. So I got this amazing photo here. Wow. If anybody would like to purchase a print of this later, please let me know. I can print it to like 4x6 maybe. Yeah. So I'm driving up the summit. And I got my camera. I'm just snapping photos away. I'm like, wow, I can take pictures at night now. There's my car. There's Pittsfield. You know, why not? And while I was up there, I just happened to get, you can see the green maybe, depending on where you're sitting, right along there. And so that was the last shot I was going to get of the Northern Lights on that night. I was almost to the top. Now, for those of you who are astronomy people, you may see a constellation there. Anybody want to point out what they might see? Yeah, it's right here. Hey, a side note on the Big Dipper, which is visible year-round. In the old days, they would test your vision by asking you to look at the second star in the handle. Because if you could see two, which you can in this photo, we're cheating right now. It meant your eyes were good. So next time you go look at the Big Dipper, have a look and see if you can see the two stars. If you can see them, great. If not, I'm sorry. I have contacts, so I see it. That's the only way I see it. Yeah. So I got up to the top, and this was the first time I'd ever shot the War Memorial up there, and I was just thrilled. And we got the Big Dipper in there again, and you can see the two stars there. So that was the genesis of all of this. So that Saturday, I ran up to the store next to my house. I lived in Dalton, and at the time the Dalton General Store was there. I lived right next to the carnival field at the American Legion. The reason I went to the store that day was because when I got home that night after shooting the Northern Lights, I was so excited and impressed with myself that I emailed the Berkshire Eagle. I think I had dial-up, so I had to stay up late and watch that little bar go across, all the sound effects that you get. Yeah. So I made a trip to the store, and I was, I thought maybe they put it in there, maybe they didn't. I don't really know. I never heard back from them, so I figured, So I went through the paper. I'm rustling through, nothing. City and town section, that's where I looked. Remember that section in the Berkshire Eagle? Was not in there. So I folded the paper back up. I put it down upside down, so the bottom of the front page was there, and there it was. And I was so excited. It's my first time being printed in a newspaper. They did print it in color, so if you're looking at this and being like, well, that's a bummer to see your Northern Lights in black and white monochrome on a paper. It was in color. I just couldn't get newspapers.com only had the black and white. So I was pretty happy about that. The reason I'm showing this to you again, if this works, is what I discovered recently in putting this presentation together is I had two pictures that were very close to one another. So there's a little bit of an animation of how the Northern Lights were moving that night. With a really good display, you will see movement. Your eyes are not great at seeing light at night, obviously, and because you can't see a lot of light at night, you can't see color. So as a result, the colors may not quite look the same, but the camera doesn't suffer from that problem. So there we go. Yeah. So what is night photography? Well, surprise, it's taking pictures at night, but there's more to it than just snapping a photo. How many people take a lot of photos with their iPhones during the day? You probably do. Yeah, everybody does. Yeah. So the photos, they're over. They snap and they're done, and you go move on and you take more pictures. Well, with night photography, you really don't have a lot of light to work with, although you might if you let enough time go by. Hello. So here's what a moonlight shot would look like. It is entirely possible to overexpose a picture at night with too much moonlight. This is about 2 minutes of exposure time. So you see, you really do have quite a bit of light there. Anybody been up to the lodge recently? Yeah. It's fun to go up there. Great views, especially at night. Here's the same building on a moonless night. So depending on what direction you're going in, you can decide what kind of photography you want to do. With moonlight, you got great bright foregrounds, and with starlight, you have beautiful skies. So what's your goal? Yeah. Things also move through the sky while you're taking pictures. So you may look at this and think, oh, look at all those UFOs. Those are like JetBlue, Delta, and American. Yeah, those are planes, which frequently appear in my images as long lines. But we do see other things, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And so after several years of practicing and getting new gear and using new techniques to edit, I was able to start to bring out a little bit more Milky Way stuff. That said, of course, you're sitting between those two pictures right now. When they called me, they emailed me several years ago, and they said, hey, we're interested in putting these photos in when they did the remodel. And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. I had no idea that they were going to print. I think this is like 10 by 20, and I think this is 10 by 10 on vinyl. So if they ever remodel again, I don't know how I'll get them out of here, but I want those pictures. I hope so. I hope so. If you ever remodel, I've got more. So no problem. So, okay, here's our first pop quiz question. Wait until you see all the answers before you throw your hand up for this. Which one? Cold weather, solar flare. Her hand went up there.
Me?
Yeah.
Solar flare?
Okay. She almost jumped out of her seat for that one. There you go. Okay. All right, got 2 more chances. Ooh. Solar flares. All right, nice job. Okay, so Milky Way season and astro landscape photography. When I say astro landscape, that's not the deep sky stuff. Landscape's in the word. So that's like what you've been seeing. We're going to put a landscape in the foreground, and we're going to line it up with the Milky Way so it looks really interesting. So you're here in the Greylock Reservation area. The reason I'm pointing this out is because it's important to understand where you are when you look at these photos coming up. So you're here, but really, in the grand scheme of things, you're actually there. So we're in a galaxy called the, anybody? Milky Way. Milky Way. This is not our exact galaxy because we don't have a camera that goes out that far to photograph, but this is a galaxy very similar to ours, and we are on one of the outer bands, and we're looking back in the center. So when we take pictures at night on moonless nights and you hear about the Milky Way band or the galactic core, what you're going to see, dancing, but what you're going to see is something like this. So that is our galactic core that we're looking back into. Now, just to blow your mind a little bit, that is so far away from where we're located here. It takes the light 27,000 light years to get here. So 27,000 years ago, the light reaching your eye left there. You're looking back in time, technically. Everything in the night sky, you're looking back in time at. Even the moon, the light from the moon that you're seeing, when you look at the moon, that light left the moon 1.3 seconds ago. That also means that there's a lot of stars in the night sky that are not where you're currently seeing them. Some of them may not even exist anymore. They might have blown up. We just don't know yet. A light year is how they measure distance. It's how far light travels in a year. That's 6 trillion miles in a year. So do just quick math. Anybody got an answer? 6 trillion times 27,000. Anybody? You know? Okay, yeah. Not even going to bother because it's not even a number your brain will get, right? Yeah. So with the right alignments, you can get some really nice shots, and it depends on really where you are and where you're aiming and the time of year. This was shot down on Cape Cod earlier in the year, and you're going to see that it's kind of oriented in different positions. Sometimes it looks vertical, sometimes it looks a little on the flat side. And there's a reason for that, which I'll talk about in a second. First off, it rises earlier every day. The Milky Way rises a little bit earlier every day, which means that sometimes later in the year, and we're kind of getting towards that, it's actually setting right behind the sun. And then we have a time where you can't see it because it's out during the day. So your best bet is, if you want to see it late January, early in the morning, if you're an early morning riser, that's great. Right now, summer southwest-ish, earlier in the summer, southeast. In October, it's way off to the southwest, and once we get past October, it kind of gets involved in the light pollution, then it sets right after sunset. This is what it looks like earlier in the year along the National Seashore, which is a great place because it is super dark out there. All you're doing is looking out towards Europe. That would be the next area of light pollution. Yeah. So your ideal conditions, if you're interested in seeing the Milky Way with your own eyes, this isn't photography specific. Obviously, you want dark skies away from light pollution. Mount Greylock is a really nice spot for that because you're way up in the air. You want minimal smoke and dust. So Canadian wildfires this year that happened in October, it was a little smoky, obviously. Unobstructed skies east, south, and west. And lower humidity. The lower the humidity, the better. So like photographing in this room right now would be not good because it's very humid. Yeah. If you look straight up, you'll typically see the most amount of stars because you're looking through the least amount of atmosphere. Anybody want to guess what this building is? Bascom Lodge, yeah, it's Bascom Lodge from behind. So if you look straight up, just about anywhere where there's not a lot of lights, you'll see a lot of stars, as opposed to the horizon. So here's that photo again. So you can see how the stars just sort of disappear. It's because you're looking through a lot of thick atmosphere at that point. So a good way to tell if somebody has photoshopped their night photography is if you have stars going all the way down to the horizon. That's usually a Photoshop job. Yeah, yep. We have an atmosphere. You may be surprised to hear this. So it doesn't really work that well. So for those of you who are photographers, if you have a DSLR or mirrorless camera, and no iPhones, I'm sorry, we're not there yet. A wide aperture lens, you're going to need a tripod because you got to put that on the tripod to stay nice and still.
And a light, you may want to do a little bit of light painting. We'll talk about that. And you may also want to be able to see where you're going because it's a lot darker at night than you might think, even when your eyes adjust. So how to photograph it. Here are some settings if you're a photographer and you think you want to take a picture. Here come the cameras. You want to take a picture? Try these settings. I'm not going to go over them in detail for the people who are like, just keep going, it's warm. So, all right, let me know when everybody good? Yes. All right, gotcha. I do teach night photography events. I have one up there tonight. If you're interested, let me know. The 16th is sold out. I try to do it twice a year, and as she mentioned earlier, there is that crazy bright light at the top, and so I will typically do them in September around that bird migration. Usually seems to happen around the darkest weeks of the month, so when that happens, I'm usually up there lurking around with the groups. Used to do them in June and July, but they fixed the light. I think for years it was mostly off because somebody up there told me one time all the lightning strikes that it used to get. So now it's just too bright to shoot other than that bird migration. So I appreciate the birds. Yeah. If you're interested in seeing the Milky Way, here's a couple resources that you can try out. Stellarium is an app that I use. You may have to pay $2.99 to get it, but if you look at it online, you can actually just go through their web interface. It's free. It will tell you where things are going to be based on a certain time. You can look months or years ahead. You can put in where you're at. This says Lanesboro. This is tonight, actually.
Oh, wow.
So here's tonight.
This is awesome. No, this ain't fair.
Yeah.
Tim, we love you for this information.
Oh, sure. Yep. So there's one thing that I really want to point out for tonight, and that is Saturn. Saturn is up. Saturn's in Aquarius, for those of you who are into astrology. It means nothing to me in that way. I don't know if that means good or bad, but it's up. And it looks sort of like a yellowish, fairly bright star. So if you're here at the visitor center and you're looking straight off the back, it's going to be a little ways off to the left over there. And you can see that's the Milky Way band tonight. And that's the way it's going to look for the next week and a half or so. Yeah, so pretty good. You can also download this, Skyview Lite. It's completely free. It's available on iPhone and Android. I use it quite a bit. It'll constantly nag you to upgrade, but it has that sort of VR. You can hold it up to the sky. It'll tell you what you're looking at. You can also get books. Remember those? Books? Yeah. I just got this. I got a used version of this book recently, thanks to her finding it in a bookstore while we were up in Vermont. I paid, I don't know, $4 or $5 for it, little field guide. This one here, Night Watch, they update every couple of years. If you're really into the astronomy and you want something a little bit more than an intro book, this is a much thicker book with really nice pictures. So would definitely recommend. All right, so let's talk about things we would see in the sky. Sky things, yeah, because I can't always identify what I'm looking at. Back in 2020, we had Comet Neowise. Did anybody get to see Neowise when it came through? You did?
Yeah.
Were you up here, like around here? Or did you go?
On Cape Cod.
Oh, okay. Then you're going to like the pictures coming up. Yeah. All right. So Comet Neowise came through. Comets are dirty snowballs. That's basically what they are. They're ice and rock. They come from outside the solar system. They get grabbed by our sun's gravity, and they whip around the sun. And as they get closer, they grow a tail. Sometimes they grow a couple of tails. One might be an ion, and the other one's ice and dust. The tail gets longer the closer it gets to the sun. Oh. So back in 2020, this was Highland Light on Cape Cod. And you could find the Big Dipper in this shot, right? It's up at the top. If you looked right below the Big Dipper, there was the comet. Now, as usual, it was not overly clear that week. So I had to go to places where I thought I'd have little breaks in the sky, and this was one of them. Highland was going under a restoration. It was going to be 8 months, but thanks to COVID, it was 3 years. So there was a lot of the scaffolding going on. So I was able to go up there after dark and get some nice options up there. And I was absolutely thrilled. I was so thrilled, I knew that I was going to be able to shoot another lighthouse called Nauset Light. If you ever eat from a Cape Cod potato chips bag, that's the light on the front. Yeah. So I was going to shoot the comet over that lighthouse, and through a comedy of errors, I ended up there. It's an hour from my house with what I thought was all my gear, but I left one thing out, which was the camera. So I had all these extra lenses, but the camera bag weight felt right. So I didn't really think much when I got there, and then I was like, great, all I got is lenses. So I didn't have enough time to drive home and then drive back because you only had about 2 hours to see this before it also set. So I drove home, And when I got back up this way, I stopped here and got this. This was the last shot I was able to get. This is in Yarmouth at Gray's Beach, if you're familiar with the Cape. Yeah, thank you. And all that orange back there is light pollution from Plymouth, because the camera gear is really sensitive to it. So the other thing I was working against that week was moonlight. We had a lot of moonlight starting to come in every night, and I knew I'd only have a couple nights left. And I drove all the way out here because I knew that I had one clear night option if I made it out here before we'd have too much moonlight. So I made Greylock my destination. And I started driving up this hill that y'all came around. There's like the farm, and then there's a bunch of pasture over here. And I saw a farm tractor, and I was like, ooh, that's going to be a fun shot. So I jumped out on the side of the road. I grabbed some of my lighting, and we've got the moon setting over here. We've got Neowise. This is the second to last shot I got of the comet. And then for those of you in the front, maybe in the streak?
Yeah.
Oh, you can see the streak.
Yeah.
Okay. There. That's what you're looking at? That was a passing satellite. Yeah, passing satellite. So satellites, they kind of tumble through space. They're made of aluminum and metals, and they may reflect the sun back towards you, and that's what you get as they move. And I drove up the road a little bit, and here's the sign right down the road here. So I was happy to get that. And this is caused by a long exposure with a car driving by. So a car went through the exposure, and the sign itself I lit with a flashlight because it would have been in silhouette. That was single exposure. Thank you. Good news. There's a comet right now. Right now. This Japanese amateur astronomer was taking some pictures last month. They always name it after you if you're the one who discovers it. Nishimura. And this comet right now is visible in the morning. You got to be an early riser, but it's going to peak on September 12th, which is just a couple days away. So if you get up 90 minutes before dawn and you look towards the east, northeast, it'll look like a fuzzy little blob. Now, it's not going to have a big tail that you can see without a camera, but it'll be out there. It'll be closest to Earth next week, but it also will be close enough to the sun where they're concerned it's going to kind of just evaporate. Neowise has been on a perpetual orbit. It never quite gets so close that it burns up. If you missed it, it's okay. It will be back in 6,800 years. So you can put it in your calendar. This one will be back in 400 years if it survives the trip around the sun. Yeah. So I was up on Mount Greylock it was late September on a little photography mission. And I was getting set up, and there were some park rangers on the other side of the summit. And I heard all of these people going, whoa, what's that? So I started looking around because I knew they weren't talking about me. And suddenly I saw this. And I'm like, what is this? So I just kept taking pictures. And as it traversed, I was like, oh, I think I know what this is. So yeah, so this was a rocket launch from Florida. Yeah, so this is one of Elon Musk's Starlink rockets. So I thought it might have come out of Virginia, because if you know where to look, sometimes the Virginia ones come up the coast and you can spot it. But in this case, it was coming out of Florida, which, if you had told me I was going to photograph a Florida rocket launch from Mount Greylock, I would have been like, you're nuts. Yeah. So I ran around, and so as it got higher, it started to release the booster rockets, and eventually it disappeared. It didn't take long. This all happened over the course of like maybe 3 minutes. So I had to run around real quick. Thankfully, I'd already dialed in some of the settings I was going to use. Yeah. So let's see if this works. It's just like a quick little animation so you can kind of get an idea how it went. Yeah. So that was a fun night, you know. As far as I know, I'm the only one that got this shot on Greylock. I didn't see any other photographers around. I did send it to the Berkshire Eagle just for ha-has.
You should send it to NASA also.
Yeah, I know it. I tagged the DCR in this too when I put it online. Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of neat. So when that rocket goes up, it puts up something called Starlink, which are these tiny little satellites that go in a train. Yeah. Oh, okay. Have you guys seen these before? Yeah.
More of these last night.
Oh, last night?
Yeah.
Oh.
They go up frequently in Florida.
Oh, I bet. I just saw this a couple nights ago on the Cape. Yeah, it probably was the same one. I was with a group of people, and yeah. So if you see these, that's what it is. We're not being invaded or anything like that. Yeah. Yep. So we also have fireflies. We get a lot of fireflies. Yeah. And so this is my best firefly picture. This was technically on Cape Cod, but to give you an idea, June is a great time to see fireflies, and I know they're out here. They're all across this field in the back. And so I've gotten a lot better than I used to at fireflies, but I tried to line it up with the Milky Way to get an interesting shot. And so here, this is the field out back here. This is what they look like. And
By the way, Tim, we have a firefly frolic twice in June, once in June and once in July.
oh, you guys should come to that.
Come to the firefly.
Yeah, I will.
Those are allowed to come and frolic.
It's just so great to see them. And when you do long exposures, one firefly will leave several blinks through the shot. So you can see them kind of going across there. Yeah. There's my car with the fireflies. Yeah. Shot out back over here. Yeah. But the settings that I showed you earlier for the Milky Way stuff, you can use that and get fireflies too. Yeah. Then other weird things happen. So I was out photographing the summit that night. I was using a light to light up the foreground. And all of a sudden I started to see this really vibrant pink glow. And I'm like, what is that pink glow? Well, it turned out that there was some sort of like growing facility in New York. They use pink glows in greenhouses now to let things grow overnight. And that's what happened. Yeah. Yeah. It was very bright, and then it went away. All right, next question. Comet Neowise will be back in how many years? 3,000, never, or 6,800? Yeah. Yeah. You got it. You guys are fast. It's getting hard. Getting hard.
Show your friends.
All right. So, night owls on the summit. I'm not really going to talk about owls. I'll be upfront with you on that. I've never seen an owl up there. I've seen an owl on the way up there. I've seen a bear and a porcupine. I like painting it. There was a porcupine sitting on the steps leading up to the memorial one night, and I lit it with a flashlight. It just kind of stood there. So I got this great shot of the porcupine at night with I couldn't find it. I know it's somewhere. So occasionally when I'm out roaming around, I run into people. And years ago, I found that people were suspicious. You're walking around at night with camera gear. We all know it's too dark to take pictures at night, right? It's a lot more common now. Like I ran into the police. I ran into the police last week up at a lighthouse, and the first thing he said to me was like, "You getting some good shots tonight? Let me see what you got." You know, and we had like a half an hour conversation about night photography. But in the older days, 5-10 years ago, it was like, "What are you trying to break into? What are you doing?" Yeah. But then I just run into people that are just super inquisitive. So I was up there one night, and I was setting up a shot. I was trying to shoot the the binoculars up there, the pay binoculars. Trying to shoot that because I could see the Milky Way over it. I like the foreground. You had the city. And a couple had walked up, and they were asking me, "Oh, what are you doing?" It wasn't that far after dusk. And I often find that it's a heck of a lot easier to show people than to tell people what I'm doing. Because you try to explain night photography, and people are like, "I don't know what you're talking about." So I actually offered to do a light painting demonstration using them as the subject. So we got that. Yeah. So I'm not 100% sure, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was like early relationship, first date-ish, around there, second date. They are here today. Thanks for coming. Yep. And so I got this shot. So this is achieved by having people lean up against things that are kind of solid, because trying to do a 30-second exposure to get the Milky Way, there's no way you're going to stand that still long enough to get in the shot. So I said, "Hey, can you just kind of lean up against this here, and then I'll do some lighting." And the only light I had on me that night was this handheld light here. And so what I did was I set the shot up, I started the shutter, and I ran over to the side, and I just did a quick lighting like this on him, and then I shut it off. And that was all I needed to kind of freeze him in place. So we did it. And then I said, I don't know if I sent you guys this picture or not. I feel like I did recently. I was like, all right, now let's just do something dumb. So now we're making faces. So we got those in there. Now, flash forward to June-ish of last year. I'm driving to go do a shoot somewhere, and I get a message from Shayla, and she goes, hey, do you remember us? You photographed us up on Greylock, and we're married now, and would you be interested in doing another shot for us? And I said, yeah, but I don't know when I can get up there because I got things going on. There's a seasonality to this. But finally we made it happen in September. I don't remember what the date was, but it was late September. And so we were able to update our photo. I got much better with my lighting. Yep. I got better camera equipment and new skills on developing some of these portrait photos. So I had one of their friends hold the light off to the side, and then I had a light, but we made it happen. And they brought their friends, and I wasn't going to be like, nah, we're not going to do that, you know. So we did, yeah. And then I just meet random people here and there that I never really chat with again. But you know, if I see people, I say, hey, you know what? Line up here. I'll grab your shot, and we got that. This happened because it was my birthday several years ago, and I was up on the summit in a chair, and I was just going to hang out, and this guy walks up from behind me, which is never a fun experience at night in the dark, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, here's another citizen officer trying to hassle me. It turns out this was a thru hiker. He was doing the Appalachian Trail. He was going to stay on the summit for the night, and his name was Daniel, but everybody who's on the trail has a nickname. His nickname, for some reason, was Moose. I don't know why. But I spent about an hour with him, and we had great conversation. He was telling me how he was hiking from Georgia up to Maine, and that he had worked at LL Bean for a week down there and then decided he wanted to do the trail hike, and then he quit. But they told him, you know what? We want people who do that type of thing to work for us, so do your trail hike, and when you're done, come back to work here. So he was able to do that, yeah. Yeah, so he was a nice guy. And then this is Clark and his fiance. He proposed to her at one of my night photography workshops. So that was, he did warn me in advance that it was coming. So we didn't have the best conditions that night, but I said, well, let's try to get something. That was the night where that giant globe light was on. And so as a result, a lot of light. We had to go behind the lodge to try to get a reasonable shot there. Yeah. This is when the monument was getting repaired. I had a night photography workshop up there, and also the local astronomy club had come up. And so that's where you see all the red lights, and you got people walking through with headlamps on. It was a real mess. but it was a lot of fun. Yeah, we had a good time that night. Yep. But this is typically what my events look like up there. That was from a couple years ago. And you can see with that globe off what a difference it makes in the night sky, you know? Yeah. That's right. Yeah, you do get some ghosts in there. If you move around a little bit, that happens. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about shooting for the moon. So I've showed you a bunch of photography with the Milky Way, but some people like to shoot in moonlight, and that's what I love. You have to decide as a photographer, is the moon your subject or is it your light source? Because it very rarely can be both. The moon moves its own width every 2 minutes from our vantage point. So you have to shoot really quick. So here's... The moon moves its own width every 2 minutes from our vantage point. So if you held your thumb up like that, for 2 minutes, the moon would already be one thumb over at that point. Yeah. So here's what that would look like as a light source. So you can see a little bit of the foreground. You can obviously see some lighting on the tower here. You can see some stars and some diffused glow. If you want it as your subject, you have to do a much quicker exposure to freeze it in its movement, you know, but that means you underexpose everything else. Now, rarely you can get the best of both worlds, and that usually happens sometimes around sunset or sunrise when you have a little bit of twilight left. Here's the difference between the two. It all depends on the effect you're going for. But here's a night where you have a subject that's illuminated, and then you have the moon rising, so you can kind of get in between. That's why you see great moonlight shots, cityscapes, nice sharp moons. You can get away with it, yeah. But this is the type of work that I do. I like to use the moonlight as our light source. This is a 2 minutes and 5 vertical exposures, and then I stitch them together as a panorama. So yeah, so it creates this really nice, like immersive, and the moon was in the right spot. It was right in between the lodge and the monument. Yeah. Plenty of moonlight to work with. We got the Big Dipper. Can you see how the stars have kind of moved along here? So that happens because the Earth is rotating, and it makes the stars look like they're moving. And that's how far they move in about 2 minutes. Yeah. So that means if you want to do star trail shots, you can go for really, really long shots. Yeah. It also has a great way of stretching out clouds. So if you can have the moon backlight some clouds and you do some longer exposures, they'll get this sort of misty, stretchy look. And if somebody stops in the middle of your photo for about 15 seconds, that's what it's going to look like. Yeah. I could have edited them out, but I thought it looks kind of interesting, you know? Yeah. There we go. This one I thought was funny. Here's 2 minutes of the clouds just kind of moving along. This looks like a thought bubble. I think I call this one like Greylock thinks. You put like words up there, like stop taking my picture or something. Yeah. But also, you might just have really cloudy nights, like this one. So if you can shoot east or west or in the direction of the clouds either going away from you or coming at you, you can get some really nice streaky lines here. By the way, this is Jupiter. Yeah, that's Jupiter moving across the shot in about 2 minutes. Yep. This is WAMC, I think. Yeah. You can also do something called light painting. You have time to do something like this. So if you've got a longer exposure going, a longer shutter, you can just let that go and you can get out a flashlight and you can start shining lights and doing fun things with colors. You can bring out detail because you have the time to work with it. And I'll use lighting equipment like this. A friend of mine actually makes these, but it can duplicate any color in the spectrum. So you could do all the different colors you want. But I use it a little bit more subtly in my cape work. I don't use a bunch of crazy colors. I like to just bring out a little detail. But here tonight I was using that crazy stuff. So here's something interesting.
So you set up the light red inside.
I actually handheld the light. I went up there. Here's something interesting about night photography. You've already seen how you ghost into the image if you stand still too long. But if you keep moving, you won't actually appear in your shot. So I could set this up. I can walk up the stairs. I crouch down. You don't want it to see the light source. That's the thing with the camera. You don't want it to see the light source because you'll get the streakies like we had with the people on the summit at the astronomy thing. So I just crouched down a little bit and I took the red light and I shined it all around that door frame and then I shined it down the steps. And then I walked back behind the camera and I had a different light just to bring out the detail on that plaque. Yeah, so those are the fun things you can do with night photography.
Okay, so you flash it around, right?
Yeah.
And then you set it down, and then you go take your picture? Or?
No, you leave the shutter going so that the exposure's recording the entire time.
Oh.
Yeah, so anywhere you put light, it's going to appear.
So in the previous one, Tim, you had blue on one side and red on the other?
Yeah.
So did you like run around and turn your one light to blue, and then you went around the other side and turned, or did you have two lights?
I had one handheld light, and so once you shine it in one place, now it's baked into the image. And then you can run around and do the other side with one light. Yeah. Yep. So photographers, if the moon is going to be your subject, this is going to be your settings. It's called the F11 rule. It's whatever your ISO is, the shutter is kind of the inverse in time. So ISO 100, 1/100 shutter, 200. You can kind of see the trend here. But if it's your light source, like what I've been showing you, try F8, ISO 400, and 2 minutes, and just let that light slowly bake into the image, and you're going to get something pretty cool, I think. All right. Sometimes we get just foggy nights in general, and that's okay. There's plenty of light up there anyway from the monument and from the lodge. You might get some stars in there. It's typically foggy up there, so it can be just something you're gonna deal with. But you get all these really weird different effects. Same kind of lighting technique here. Low clouds picks up a lot of that light pollution because you can see Albany and like the capital region. This is looking west, so the orange light is kind of bouncing off the sky and coming back and creates this whole like sepia tone. And then just a foggy night up there. Sometimes you're in the clouds and it's just coming right by the monument. You maybe wait a minute and you get a little break and you just photograph it and see what you get. Kind of reminds me of a painting, like brush strokes up in the upper right there. Yeah. And then you get too much fog sometimes, which you can get some cool stuff with, but usually you're good for 1 or 2 shots and it's like, okay, it's just too darn foggy for that, Yeah. But there's so many great angles of the monument up there that you can get. I don't encourage you to stand in the road. Yes?
Is that a filter that makes it look like?
Oh, great question. It is not a filter. So if you dial your aperture to f8 to f11 in that range there, the effect that you get is a starburst. Yeah, because of the aperture blades in the lens. The light's squeezing through that. Yeah.
Is that a comet or a...
That was a lens flare.
No, the streak.
That's a lens flare right here. This here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the lens flare because there's so much light nearby. Yeah, if you look at it closer, you can kind of see it's like a rainbow. Yeah. So if you're going to shoot foggy nights up there and maybe get a little bit of stars, here's a batch of settings you can try out. Wait for the cameras to go there. All right. And then you could always use things around you to get great reflections. So this is the globe right after twilight. And if you look really close, you can see the lights from atoms here. And you can see the silhouette of the sunset off to the west in the glass. So that's kind of fun too. All right, last question. You'll see the most stars on a clear moonless night when looking directly overhead, close to the horizon, or at 45 degrees above the horizon. Oh, the hand was first. Straight overhead. Yep. Straight overhead. There you go. You're welcome. Thanks for paying attention. Yay. Nice job. Nice job. Yep. So, in conclusion, so you're like, oh, I can go outside now. Yay. Come a long way over the years. I love Greylock. It's a great place to visit at night. I know that, like, officially, I don't think they encourage you, right? They don't really encourage you to go up there at night.
The park is open from dawn to dusk. But if you would like to stay overnight at Bascom Lodge in season, then you are able to stay up at the summit overnight. Also, your program, there's another program that used to happen. It hasn't since COVID, but the Astronomy, Amherst, the Amateur Astronomy Association, and another A. They used to have a program too, and so we allowed people to go up for those, those particular ones. But otherwise,
it is a great place to visit at night.
you can hike the AT.
That's true. You could hike up like that moose guy did. Yeah. If you go up there with me, I have the permit to be up there for those nights. We get conditions that look just like these. Even if you're not somebody who's way into photography, but you got a camera, it's all skill levels. So over the years, I've just loved going up to Greylock. It's such a quiet, peaceful place to be any time of the day, but especially at night. You can see all sorts of amazing things up there, especially with the light out. You get a beautiful Milky Way. You get Andromeda, that's the galaxy Andromeda. It's amazing the amount of stars that you'll see up there, even just with your own eyes. And you don't need camera equipment to enjoy this. You just need the time to go out and bring a blanket or a chair and just relax. You could have a telescope. I have a telescope that I use once a week with an astronomy group, and I love it. I have a great time, but the best nights are just going out on a blanket or with a chair and looking straight overhead. Yes?
Is that the North Star in the middle?
It is the North Star in the middle, and this is a 30-minute exposure. Yeah, 30 minutes. And by the way, if you're ever interested in a telescope, let me tell you that Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace are great places to get them. A telescope like this would typically run you $1,000. But if you find someone like I did who bought it for someone who didn't like astronomy and lived too close to bright lights, you can get one for $300. And that happens pretty frequently. So keep an eye out for used ones. They're hardly ever touched. This is my favorite photo, and I'm leaving you with this. This is a 30-minute exposure. I just set the tripod on the ground. And for me, this was never about getting a photo. It's just being out at night and enjoying the space. There's a paved path that goes around the summit near the binoculars. And I just laid on the ground for 30 minutes, looking up at the stars, letting this camera do its thing. And this was the result. It's a blended exposure. So there's 30 minutes of motion, and I took one of my 30-second shots and blended the Milky Way in. And then we had a plane kind of zip through here. So Mount Greylock, what can I say? If you've not been there at night, oh, yes.
How come, is it just the atmosphere that on either side, because the other one that you took, the North Star was in the middle and everything went around kind of in a circle around it.
Yeah.
And on the two corners of this,
Oh, right.
it bends.
So north, that's a great question. So north in this shot is way over here. So you can see how the stars are arcing around. So the North Star would be right around here, and what that would mean is if my camera was facing that direction, the North Star would be a pinpoint. It just depends on the way you're pointing. So if you point towards the west or southwest, you actually get the split between the hemispheres, because down here, the southern hemisphere has its rotation. So the stars kind of separate on a line right around here. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how, hello, that's how you can find me if you're interested. Cape Knights Gallery. CapeKnightsGallery.com. If you'd like the photos that you saw today, you can scan that. It'll bring you to some links. I have a Mount Greylock gallery full of the photos that you saw today. If you have any questions on anything you saw today, you can email me at info@CapeKnightsGallery.com. And thanks for sweltering with me through this presentation. I think I did exactly an hour. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.